I'm Laura from Meadowlark Violin. Today I want to talk to you about beginner violin strings. So what I did over the past couple months is I used my violin, my nice violin that I use all the time, and I changed out the strings with 3 different strings, beginner strings, Ascentes, Helicores, and Dominants. And what I did is I put the strings on, then I waited about 2 weeks for them to stretch out and settle down, and then I made recordings of the same scales and songs on each set of strings so that you can really hear the differences between each one. Now, I would like to make a little side note here. For the past 10 or 15 years, I've only played on Eva Perazzis or Obligatos, which are really nice sets of strings. They run around $70 to $90. And I had no idea how easy they made playing the violin until I started putting on these cheaper sets of strings. The cheaper sets of strings make playing a lot harder, actually. You really have to be on top of your game. The nicer sets of strings are so much more forgiving of little mistakes or little inaccuracies. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're going to go through the trouble of replacing the strings, it's worth putting on a good set of strings. It's really going to make a difference in your playing. But also, with that, make sure you've got a good violin too. Putting a nice set of strings on a cheap violin isn't going to make a huge difference. So I'll put a link in the subscription to some of my favorite violins or some recommendations for some violins. So on to the string comparisons. And at the end, I'm going to give you my overall thoughts and recommendations for each of those strings. the differences with those strings. If you couldn't hear a big difference, that's okay. Sometimes it's hard to hear the differences, but it's a lot easier to feel the differences with those strings. And I could feel a lot of very different things going on with each of those strings. So first off, with the Ascentes, you probably noticed they were really bright and ringy and resonant, and that sounded good, but you might have noticed that it was really hard to get a clean start. For instance, I didn't edit out all the tries it took me to just play an open G string. Now it shouldn't take that many tries, you should be able to get it on the first try, but the Ascentes made it a little bit more challenging. So if you have a little bit more to spend, I would go for the Helicores. So the Helicores were a decent set of strings. They were easier to play on. I still noticed some things that made it harder to play. Perhaps not as smooth with the bow changes, not as great of starts as I'm used to, but they were okay for beginner or beginner to intermediate students. They had a decent tone. Nothing to write home about, but they do the job pretty well. So if you could spend a little bit more, I would definitely go with the Dominants. And these would be my top pick for any beginner players from any level or age. The Dominants have an even tone. They make it pretty easy to play, easy to have good starts. So just all in all, in general, they're a good set of strings. One thing I noticed about the Dominants is that when I was trying to play really advanced things or advanced bow strokes or just asking a lot of my strings, it wasn't quite delivering the way I was used to with better sets of strings. So if you are getting into more advanced things, or maybe your teacher's starting to talk about developing a tone and developing a good rich sound, that's going to make so much more sense to you if you have a good set of strings like Eva Perazzi's. I can't go on enough about how much easier and much more enjoyable a good set of strings makes playing, like Eva Perazzi's. So if you can afford it, go ahead and put them on. You don't have to be an advanced player to have an advanced set of strings, and you're going to get so much more out of the violin and enjoy playing so much more, because I can't wait to put Eva Perazzi's back on my violin. So hopefully that helped you make some decisions regarding beginner or intermediate or advanced violin strings, and I hope it makes your playing so much more enjoyable. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or visit my website, meadowlarkviolin.com, for lots of great violin resources. I'm Laura from Meadowlark Violin. Happy practicing!